Commander Velthok limped into the massive War Council chamber, his dark blue skin marked with fresh scars that told stories of unimaginable horror. The golden armor that once made him the pride of the Crexian military now hung in twisted pieces, held together by emergency field patches. Behind him, the great doors sealed shut with a deep metallic boom that echoed through the silence. 47. Different alien species filled the amphitheater's curved seats, their various forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes. The insectoid hive queens clicked their mandibles nervously. The crystalline shards hummed with worried frequencies. Even the massive rock-like titans shifted their boulder bodies uneasily. Never before had they seen a Crexian commander in such a state. Velthik's boots clicked against the polished floor as he walked toward the speaking platform. Each step sent pain shooting through his wounded leg, but he refused to show weakness. Not here. Not when the fate of the entire galaxy hung in the balance. "Honorable delegates," he began, his normally commanding voice now carrying a tremor that made several council members lean forward in their seats. "I stand before you today not as the victor I was meant to be, but as the only witness who lived to tell you what we truly face."
Ow.
The silence in the chamber was so complete that the soft hum of the life support system seemed loud. Velthok touched a control on his damaged wrist computer, and a holographic star map appeared above the platform, showing the spiral arm where his fleet had met its doom. 23 cycles ago, Fleet Group Omega departed from our homeworlds, 300 ships, the finest warriors in Crexian history. Our mission was simple: locate and conquer the primitive species in the Sol system, just as we had done to 46 other worlds before them. He paused, his yellow eyes scanning the faces of beings who had once trembled at the mention of Crexian might. Now those same creatures watched him with a mixture of pity and growing fear. The initial scan showed us exactly what we expected. A blue-green world with chemical rockets barely capable of reaching their nearest moon. Primitive nuclear technology. Radio waves indicating fractured nations constantly fighting among themselves. They seemed perfect for harvesting, divided, weak, ripe for conquest. High Chancellor Morden of the Apex Coalition rose from his seat, his 6 arms gesturing dismissively. The Chancellor's species had ruled through diplomacy for 3,000 years, and his voice carried the authority of ages. "Commander Velthok, surely you exaggerate the threat. The reports from our deep space scouts confirmed these humans possessed no faster-than-light travel, no energy shields, no plasma weapons. How could such primitives possibly challenge the Dominion?" Velthak's expression darkened, and for a moment the old fire returned to his eyes. "That is exactly what we thought, Chancellor. That arrogance cost me everything." He manipulated his wrist device, and the hologram zoomed in on Earth, showing the planet as it had appeared to his fleet. "Look at it. Beautiful, isn't it? Green continents, blue oceans, white clouds. Looks so peaceful from space. We detected 7 billion inhabitants spread across their continents in thousands of separate political divisions. They were fighting 17 different wars when we arrived. We laughed at their primitive missiles and crude explosives. The chamber remained silent, but tension filled the air like an electrical storm. I remember Admiral Kexron joking that it would take longer to process the surrender documents than to conquer the entire planet. Captain Zorthok wagered he could claim 3 continents before the humans even knew we were there. Velthik's voice cracked slightly. "They're both dead now, along with 284,973 other souls under my command." Several council members gasped. The floating orbs of Nexus Prime began glowing brighter with shock. The loss of an entire Crexian fleet was unprecedented in galactic history. When we began our standard intimidation protocol, broadcasting surrender demands in their primitive languages, something happened that I still don't fully understand. Instead of panic, instead of the chaos we expected from a divided species, they did something impossible. Velthak touched his controls again, and the hologram showed Earth's surface lighting up with thousands of energy signatures. In less than 6 minutes, every single human military installation on the planet activated simultaneously, not just in one nation or one continent, everywhere. It was as if some invisible signal had awakened a sleeping giant that spanned their entire world, He pointed to specific locations on the hologram. I watched Captain Junho coordinate the defense of their Seoul sector with mathematical precision that would have impressed our best tactical computers. Admiral Min Jae commanded their Pacific naval forces with a strategic brilliance that reminded me of our greatest war heroes. Colonel Dudgeon turned the city of Tokyo into a fortress that seemed to grow deadlier by the minute. The hologram showed defensive positions appearing across Earth's surface like flowers blooming in fast forward. But it was more than just military coordination. These humans, they transformed their entire civilization into a weapon pointed directly at us. Every factory began producing ammunition. Every school became a command center. Every hospital started manufacturing combat stimulants. In 6 hours, they had done what most species take months to accomplish. Chancellor Morden sat back down heavily, his 6 arms folding in a gesture of deep thought. You're telling us that a primitive species achieved total war mobilization in mere hours? I'm telling you, Velthok replied, his voice dropping too. Almost a whisper, that we didn't encounter a primitive species at all. We encountered something far more dangerous, a species that had spent their entire evolutionary history preparing for a war like this. Coming. The implications of his words settled over the council like a cold shadow, and for the first time in galactic history, the great powers of the galaxy felt afraid. Velthok's clawed hands trembled as he activated the holographic display.
Ice.
And suddenly, the entire council chamber was filled with the three-dimensional image of Earth. As it had appeared during those first terrible moments of contact, the blue marble hung peacefully in the artificial space above their heads, looking deceptively calm. We transmitted our surrender demands in 43 different human languages. Velthok continued, his voice growing stronger as he relived the memory. Standard galactic protocol dictates that primitive species typically respond within 272 hours with either immediate surrender or confused attempts at communication. We expected frightened radio transmissions, maybe some primitive leaders begging for mercy. The hologram began to pulse with red dots appearing across Earth's surface, like a deadly rash spreading across healthy skin. Instead, what we received was absolute silence for exactly 4 minutes and 17 seconds. Then, Velthok paused, his yellow eyes reflecting the horror of the memory. Then every single defensive installation on the planet came alive at once. The red dots on the holographic Earth suddenly blazed into brilliant light, thousands upon thousands of them spanning every continent. The council members leaned forward in their seats, mesmerized by the display. Major Soyoung was stationed in what the humans call the Korean Peninsula. From our orbital sensors, we detected her mountain facility as a minor radar installation. We were wrong. The hologram zoomed in on the mountainous region, showing massive doors opening in the sides of peaks that had appeared completely natural. In 7 minutes, she launched 47 intercontinental ballistic missiles from bases carved directly into the mountain cores. These weren't crude rockets. They were precision-guided nuclear weapons with targeting systems that tracked our ships through space. Several council members gasped as the hologram showed the missiles streaking upward through Earth's atmosphere, leaving trails of fire behind them. But that was nothing compared to Commander Dongwoo's surprise. The display shifted to show Earth's polar regions, where the ice caps stretched for thousands of kilometers. We detected no military presence beneath the ice. Our thermal scanners showed only frozen wasteland. We never imagined they had submarine bases built directly under the polar ice. The hologram revealed massive submarines breaking through thick ice, their hulls black against the white landscape. Dongwoo commanded 17 nuclear submarines that had been hiding beneath miles of ice for decades. Each submarine carried enough firepower to level one of our battleships. Simultaneously across both polar regions, and began launching missiles before we could react. The crystalline shards in the audience began humming with worried frequencies as they watched the tactical display. Captain Hudgens' platforms were perhaps the most terrifying discovery of all. Velthok manipulated the controls, and the view pulled back to show space around Earth. What had appeared to be simple communication satellites suddenly began unfolding like deadly flowers. What we thought were primitive satellites were actually disguised weapons platforms. Hidden among their communications network were military installations that had been masquerading as civilian technology for years. The holographic satellites transformed before their eyes, revealing missile launchers, particle beam weapons, and kinetic bombardment systems that had been waiting in orbit like sleeping predators. Hyjin activated 68 orbital platforms in the first wave alone. These weapons had been watching us from the moment we entered their solar system, disguised as harmless space junk and communication relays. She turned their entire satellite network into a three-dimensional minefield. The Council watched in stunned silence as the hologram showed the systematic destruction of the Krexian advance fleet. Ship after ship fell to the coordinated human assault, their shields overwhelmed by the sheer volume of incoming fire. Our casualties in the first 15 minutes were catastrophic, Velthok continued, his voice becoming hollow with remembered pain. 74 ships destroyed, another 36 critically damaged, but General Te-Ho ... What he did next defied every law of warfare we knew. The hologram shifted to show nuclear explosions occurring not on Earth's surface, but high. In the atmosphere itself, brilliant flashes of light erupted in the space between the planet and Velthik's fleet. When our remaining ships moved to lower orbit for a direct assault, Te-Ho gave an order that still haunts my dreams. He detonated 43 nuclear warheads in his own atmosphere, creating an electromagnetic storm that stretched across half the planet. The visuals showed cascading waves of energy rippling through space. One by one, Krexian ships began losing power and falling silent. The electromagnetic pulse disabled our navigation systems, our communications, our weapons targeting. My fleet was rendered helpless in seconds. But the truly terrifying part was what the radiation did to their own planet. Velthak's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. They poisoned their own sky, contaminated their own air, just to deny us tactical advantage. Counselor Zexara, her insectoid features rigid with shock, rose from her seat. No rational species would irradiate their own atmosphere. The environmental damage alone would take centuries to repair. They committed planetary suicide. Velthek's laugh was bitter and hollow. That's what I thought too. But I was watching their communications intercepts, listening to their military channels. Do you know what General Te-Ho said when he gave the order to detonate those warheads? Council waited in tense silence. He said, better a poisoned Earth under human control than a clean Earth under alien boots. Then he activated what they called the Aegis Protocol, a planetary defense system that turned their entire atmosphere into a weapon. The hologram showed the continuing cascade of electromagnetic interference spreading across Earth's surface, creating a barrier of destructive energy that made orbital bombardment nearly impossible. They weren't committing suicide, Velthik said, his eyes meeting those of every council member. They were buying time. While we struggled with disabled ships and disrupted communications, they were preparing for Phase 2 of their defense. And what came next? Paused, his scarred hands clenching into fists. What came next proved that humans don't just fight. To win, they fight to ensure their enemies never threaten them again. The chamber fell silent except for the soft humming of life support systems. As 47 species contemplated the terrifying implications of a race willing to poison their own world rather than surrender, the electromagnetic storm had forced Velthak's remaining fleet to retreat to high orbit. Their ships limping through space like wounded animals seeking safety. What should have been a temporary regrouping became the beginning of an even more terrifying nightmare. We pulled back to what we thought was a safe distance, Velthak continued, his voice carrying the weight of unbearable memories. 30,000 kilometers above their planet's surface, far enough to avoid their atmospheric weapons, close enough to maintain orbital bombardment capabilities. We thought we had breathing room to repair our damaged systems and plan our next assault. The holographic display shifted to show the space around Earth, revealing what appeared to be normal civilian traffic cargo ships, transport vessels, and industrial platforms going about their routine business. Lieutenant Commander Wujin was operating from what our intelligence identified as a civilian shipping coordination center, nothing more than a traffic controller for commercial vessels. We paid no attention to the cargo ships moving between their orbital factories and surface installations. Velthek's expression darkened. That was our second catastrophic mistake. The hologram suddenly came alive with movement as dozens of civilian cargo vessels began changing course, their massive bulk carriers and freight haulers turning toward the Krexian fleet with impossible coordination. Within minutes, Wu Jin had commandeered every cargo ship in Earth's orbital space. These weren't military vessels. They were mining haulers, construction transports, asteroid processors. But in her hands, they became something far more deadly. The display showed the cargo ships opening their holds and ejecting their contents. Massive shipping containers, industrial equipment, processed minerals, and construction materials. But instead of the random dump of cargo, everything moved with calculated precision. Each container was precisely launched using the ship's own cargo deployment systems. Wu Jin had turned routine cargo operations into kinetic bombardment weapons. A 20-ton shipping container moving at orbital velocity hits with the force of a small nuclear weapon. The Council watched in fascination and horror as hundreds of containers streaked through space toward the Krexian ships, their mundane appearance making them somehow more terrifying than conventional weapons. But Dr. Guinet's contribution was even more ingenious. She was a communications engineer responsible for maintaining their satellite networks. We monitored her transmissions and dismissed her as a civilian technician. Velthak manipulated the display to show the constellation of satellites surrounding Earth. We were monitoring military frequencies, watching for weapon systems and defense platforms. We never paid attention to their civilian communication grid. The satellites began moving, their solar panels unfolding and repositioning with mechanical precision. What had appeared to be simple communication arrays suddenly revealed hidden capabilities. Janae had spent years modifying civilian satellites, embedding military-grade systems within innocent communication equipment. She turned weather satellites into targeting platforms, GPS satellites into guidance systems, and communication relays into weapon controllers. Their entire civilian space infrastructure was a disguised military network. The holographic satellites began firing focused microwave beams, disrupting Krexian ship systems and overloading their electronics. Several ships in the display began spinning out of control as their navigation systems failed. Engineer Suman's assault was perhaps the most creative and terrifying of all. She controlled what the humans call space debris, old satellites, spent rocket stages, fragments from decades of space exploration. Normally, this orbital junk is carefully tracked to avoid collisions. The display showed thousands of pieces of space debris, some as small as paint flecks, others as large as old rocket boosters, all orbiting Earth in complex patterns. Suman weaponized their garbage. Using small thruster systems and magnetic fields, she began directing debris clouds toward our fleet. Every paint chip became a bullet, every metal fragment a projectile. She created cascading collision chains where one piece of debris would hit another, creating expanding clouds of destruction that were impossible to dodge. The council members watched as the space around Earth transformed into a three-dimensional minefield of deadly debris, each piece moving with lethal velocity. Our point defense systems were designed to handle missiles and energy weapons, not clouds of paint chips and metal fragments moving at 28,000 kilometers per hour. The debris tore through our hull armor like tissue paper. But Velthik's voice became even more strained as he continued. Colonel Kyung-Soo's action. It broke something in my understanding of warfare itself. The hologram focused on a large space station orbiting Earth, clearly civilian in nature, with rotating sections for artificial gravity and docking ports for cargo vessels. The Unity Station was their primary orbital research facility. 1,700 civilian scientists, engineers, and their families lived and worked there. We could see children playing in the observation decks, families eating together in the communal areas. It was clearly a non-military target. The space station suddenly began moving, its thrusters firing to change its orbital path directly toward the center of the Krexian fleet formation. And when our communications officer managed to intercept their transmissions, we heard Kyung-Soo giving the evacuation order. But there wasn't time. The station was too large, the population too great. Most of the people aboard couldn't reach the escape pods. Velthek's hands shook as he manipulated the controls. Kyangsu's final transmission was broadcast on all frequencies so we could hear it. For Earth's future, we sacrifice our present. Remember us. Then he detonated the station's fusion reactors, while 1,700 of his own people were still aboard. The holographic station erupted in a brilliant explosion, its destruction creating an expanding sphere of debris and energy that engulfed 40 Krexian warships. Several council members covered their faces or turned away from the display. Concept of deliberately sacrificing civilians for tactical advantage was beyond their moral comprehension. But Admiral Cheng Ho's final assault proved that human strategic thinking operates on levels we never imagined possible. The display pulled back to show Earth's gravity well and the complex orbital mechanics of the entire system. Cheng Ho had been calculating orbital trajectories during the entire battle, using Earth's gravity to accelerate debris and projectiles to incredible velocities. He turned the planet itself into a slingshot, launching fragments of destroyed ships and space stations at near-light speed. The hologram showed debris from the destroyed space station being caught in Earth's gravity well, accelerated around the planet, and launched back at the Krexian fleet with devastating effect. Space itself became their weapon. Every destroyed ship became ammunition for the next attack. Every piece of debris was potential projectile for the gravity slingshot. Cheng Ho had turned the laws of physics into instruments of war. The final image showed the remnants of the once mighty Krexian fleet scattered and broken, drifting through space like cosmic wreckage while Earth continued its serene rotation below, seemingly unchanged despite the epic battle that had raged. In its vicinity, in 6 hours of orbital combat, they had destroyed 2/3 of my remaining fleet using nothing but converted civilian equipment and orbital debris. And they were just getting started. The orbital bombardment had finally created enough gaps in Earth's defenses for Veltak's surviving forces to attempt planetary invasion. What remained of his once mighty fleet descended through the poisoned atmosphere, their land-in craft cutting through the electromagnetic storms that still raged in Earth's upper atmosphere. We deployed 150,000 ground troops across 12 major population centers, Velthox continued, his voice taking on a haunted quality. Standard galactic invasion protocol calls for securing government buildings, communication centers, and military installations. Control the leaders, control the infrastructure, and the population surrenders within days. The holographic display shifted to show massive Krexian dropships descending toward Earth's major cities, their hulls glowing red from atmospheric entry. The ships looked like falling meteors against the backdrop of the blue-green world. Our first landing zone was the port city of Busan, population 3.4 million. Our intelligence suggested it was primarily a commercial center with minimal military value. We expected frightened civilians hiding in their homes, maybe some scattered resistance from local police forces. The hologram zoomed in on the sprawling coastal city, showing its dense urban landscape and busy harbor. To the untrained eye, it looked like any other civilian population center. The moment our troops touched ground, we realized we weren't fighting an army, we were fighting an entire civilization. Velthok's clawed hands gestured at the display as it began showing the true nature of human urban warfare.
Ow.
Sergeant Sungman commanded what appeared to be a normal residential district. Apartment buildings, schools, shopping centers. Nothing. That registered as a military threat. The peaceful neighborhood scene suddenly came alive with hidden activity. Building rooftops revealed concealed weapon emplacements. And what had appeared to be children playing in parks were actually sophisticated observation posts. Within hours, we discovered that every human child in the city had been turned into an intelligence operative. 10-year-old humans with innocent faces would approach our patrols asking for food or help, while simultaneously transmitting our exact positions to hidden command centers. The hologram showed young humans carrying seemingly harmless toys and school supplies that were actually communication devices and surveillance equipment. Their grandparents were even more dangerous. In basement workshops beneath ordinary apartment buildings, elderly humans who could barely walk were manufacturing explosives using household chemicals and medical supplies. A 78-year-old grandmother named Mrs. Park killed 12 of my soldiers, with a bomb hidden inside a baby carriage. Several council members shifted uncomfortably as they watched the display show ordinary residential buildings, revealing hidden weapons manufacturing facilities in their basements and sublevels. Dr. Yoon Young's hospital became our greatest nightmare. We approached the medical facility expecting to find wounded civilians and surrendering medical staff. Instead, we found a fortress more dangerous than any military installation. The hologram, focused on a large hospital complex that looked entirely normal from the outside. Clean white buildings with Red Cross symbols, clearly marking it as a medical facility. Yoon Young had converted every piece of medical equipment into a weapon. X-ray machines became particle beam generators. Medical scanners were turned into targeting systems. Surgical robots were reprogrammed to attack instead of heal. Velthika's voice grew more strained. She was using the hospital's chemistry lab to manufacture biological weapons from common medical supplies. The same equipment used to save lives was creating agents designed to end them. The display showed the interior of the hospital transforming before their eyes, revealing hidden weapon systems disguised as medical equipment and treatment rooms converted into tactical command centers. Captain Ji-hoon controlled the downtown district. When our forces advanced down the main commercial streets, he made a decision that defied all military logic. The hologram showed a section of the city with tall buildings lining busy streets, filled with shops and offices. Rather than defend the buildings, he collapsed them. Entire city blocks were brought down in controlled demolitions, creating massive barrier walls of rubble that channeled our forces into kill zones. He destroyed his own city to deny us passage through it. The scene showed skyscrapers falling in perfect sequence, their collapse creating impenetrable obstacles while simultaneously crushing, advancing Krexian forces beneath tons of concrete and steel. Major Hyunwoo turned the city's infrastructure against us in ways we never imagined possible. The subway system beneath Busan became an underwater death trap when he flooded the tunnels while our troops were using them for covered advance. Hologram revealed the complex network of underground tunnels and subway lines that ran beneath the city. What should have provided safe passage for the invading forces instead became a labyrinth of drowning chambers. He opened floodgates from the harbor and redirected the city's water supply into the subway tunnels. 800 of my soldiers drowned in the darkness below the city streets, trapped like rats in a maze of their own making. The display showed water rushing through the underground passages, carrying away Krexian soldiers who had thought they were safely advancing through covered terrain. But it was Private Myung who truly broke our understanding of human warfare. Veltok's voice became barely audible, forcing the council members to lean forward to hear him. The hologram focused on a school building clearly marked with symbols indicating it was an educational facility for young humans. The building looked damaged but not destroyed, with obvious signs that it had become a shelter for civilians. Myung was 17 years old, medical trainee, not even a real soldier yet. We surrounded the school where she was treating wounded civilians and resistance fighters. We expected a quick surrender. Medical personnel are protected under every galactic warfare convention. The image showed Krexian troops surrounding the school in a standard containment formation. Their weapons trained on the exits, but not firing on what was clearly a medical facility. Came out carrying a white flag and wearing clearly marked medical insignia. Our commander prepared to accept her surrender and process the wounded inside according to standard protocols. Velthak paused, his yellow eyes reflecting a pain that went beyond physical wounds. Instead, she walked to the center of our formation and activated a device that released an aerosol cloud of modified biological agents. We later learned she had spent 3 days converting medical supplies and chemistry equipment into a weapon that would kill both human and Krexian physiology. The hologram showed the devastating effect of the biological weapon as it spread through the area around the school, affecting everyone within its range regardless of species. In the final moments, as the weapon began taking effect, she looked directly at our commander and smiled. With her dying breath, she whispered 2 words that I heard through our communication intercepts. For Earth, the chamber fell into complete silence. The concept of a medical trainee sacrificing herself, along with her own patients, to deny the enemy a victory was beyond the comprehension of most galactic species. 300 of my finest soldiers died alongside Miyang and 47 human civilians. She chose mutual destruction over surrender, and she did it with a smile on her face. Chancellor Morden Six Arms trembled as he processed the implications. She killed her own people to deny you prisoners? Final transmission was broadcast on all frequencies so we could hear it. For Earth's future, we sacrifice our present. Remember us. Then he detonated the station's fusion reactors while 100 of his own people were still aboard. She killed everyone rather than allow a single Crexian to leave that school alive with intelligence about human defensive capabilities, Velthok replied grimly. And that was when I finally understood the truth about humanity. They don't fight wars to win territory or resources or glory. They fight wars to ensure their enemies can never threaten them again, no matter what the cost to themselves. The holographic display faded, leaving only the memory of a 17-year-old human medic who had chosen death over defeat, taking hundreds of her enemies with her into the darkness. The few thousand Crexian survivors who managed to escape Earth's surface regrouped on Velthok's flagship, their one-sprout invasion force reduced to a handful of damaged ships limping through space. But the true horror was yet to come. As our medical teams treated the wounded and our engineers assessed the damage, began analyzing the data we had collected during the ground campaign. Velthak continued, his voice carrying the weight of terrible revelation. What we discovered changed everything we thought we knew about humanity. The holographic display activated once more, showing intercepted human military documents and communication records that the Crexian forces had managed to capture during their retreat. Colonel Jamin had been working in what appeared to be a simple archive facility, rows of books, digital storage systems, historical records. We thought it was just a library. But when our intelligence teams cracked their encryption codes, we found something that made our blood run cold. The hologram displayed thousands of documents, battle plans, strategic analyses, and war games dating back centuries. The sheer volume of military planning was staggering. Every tactic they used against us, every strategy that seemed so innovative and deadly, had been planned and practiced for generations. The orbital debris weapons, the civilian infrastructure converted to military use, the willingness to sacrifice their own people, all of it had been rehearsed countless times. The display showed detailed war games and simulation results, with human military leaders testing scenarios against hypothetical alien invaders with capabilities remarkably similar to those of the Crexian Dominion. Major Hay-1 had spent 20 years studying every military conflict in human history, not just recent wars, but battles dating back thousands of years. She had identified patterns, strategies, and tactics that worked regardless of technology level or enemy capabilities. The hologram showed ancient battlefields alongside modern combat zones, revealing how human military thinking had evolved through constant warfare. They had been fighting each other for their entire recorded history, and each conflict was practice for the war they knew would eventually come. Every human military leader we encountered had studied not just their own species' wars, but theoretical conflicts against technologically superior alien forces. Captain Sujin's files appeared on the display, showing decades of detailed analysis and preparation for exactly the type of invasion the Crexians had attempted. Sujin had wargamed alien invasion scenarios for 30 years. She had prepared defensive strategies for enemies with energy weapons, faster than light travel, and superior technology. When we arrived, she already knew exactly how to fight us, because she had been practicing for this war since she was a child. The council members watched in growing horror as the scope of human preparation became clear. This wasn't a species that had improvised their defense. This was a civilization that had been preparing for galactic war for centuries. But the truly terrifying discovery came when we intercepted their post-battle communications. Commander Siwu wasn't mourning their losses or celebrating their victory. He was already studying our captured technology, reverse engineering our weapons and propulsion systems. The display showed humans working with fragments of Crexian spacecraft, Their scientists and engineers dissecting alien technology with frightening efficiency in less than 48 hours. Engineer Eugen had figured out how our plasma cannons worked and was already building improved versions. Using human manufacturing techniques, they weren't just defending themselves, they were learning from us. Becoming stronger, the holographic images showed human factories rapidly retooling to produce hybrid weapons that combined Krexian energy technology with human engineering innovations. Admiral Boyoung was coordinating what they called Operation Prometheus, a massive military buildup, using our own technology against us. But this wasn't defensive preparation. They were building an invasion fleet. The display showed construction. Sites across Earth where massive shipyards were being built with incredible speed, using both human industrial capacity and captured alien technology. Then we intercepted the transmission that made us realize the true scope of the nightmare we had unleashed. Velthik activated the audio system. A crystal-clear human voice filled the council chamber, speaking in perfect galactic standard, a language that should have been completely unknown to humanity. This is Fleet Admiral Daeung of the Terran Space Command. To the species responsible for the unprovoked attack on Earth, we offer this single communication. The voice was calm, controlled, and utterly without emotion, somehow more terrifying than any battle cry or threat. We know where you live. We know your worlds. We know your families. Our deep space monitoring stations have been tracking your ships for decades. Your communications have been intercepted and decoded. Your star charts have been copied from your damaged vessels. Several council members began making distressed sounds as the implications became clear. Humanity had not just defended themselves, they had been preparing to take the war to their enemies. You came to our home uninvited. You attacked our families. You killed our children. Now we're coming to yours. Earth remembers. Earth endures. Earth conquers. The transmission paused, and when it resumed, the human voice carried a tone of absolute certainty that chilled every being in the chamber. We have analyzed your technology. We have studied your tactics. We've identified your weaknesses. It took your species millennia to develop. We have improved upon in months. Your weapons are now our weapons. Your ships are now our ships. Your knowledge is now our knowledge. The council chamber had fallen completely silent, except for the sound of the human transmission. To the 47 species of the Galactic Council, you have a choice. Stand with us against those who would wage unprovoked war, or stand aside, and let justice take its course. But know this, we will not stop until every being responsible for the attack on Earth has been held accountable. The final words of the transmission would echo through galactic history. Welcome to the nightmare you created. Earth is no longer your victim. Earth is your judge, your jury, and your executioner. We are coming. As the transmission ended, emergency. Alarms began blaring throughout the council chamber. Urgent communications were flooding in from across the galaxy, all reporting the same terrifying news. 17 star systems, Velthok said, his voice barely audible over the chaos. Human fleets appeared simultaneously in 17 different systems, including 3 Krexian homeworlds, ships that shouldn't exist, built with technology we thought was beyond their capabilities. The holographic display showed real-time reports from across the galaxy, massive human fleets, emerging from hyperspace with military precision that spoke of months of careful planning and preparation. We didn't just lose a battle, Velthok concluded as panic spread through the council chamber. We awakened something that should have remained sleeping. The humans aren't coming to conquer territory or claim resources. They're coming to ensure that no species in the galaxy will ever again make the mistake of threatening Earth. The last coherent transmission received by the Council came from a Krexian colony world as human ships appeared in its orbit. This is Commander Jin Su of the Human Expeditionary Force. By attacking Earth, you forfeited your right to peace. Now, and you will be treated according to human standards of justice. Resist, and you will discover why Earth's children learn to wage war among the stars. As the council chamber descended into chaos, and species representatives fled to defend their homeworlds, Velthok stood alone on the speaking platform. A broken warrior who had witnessed the birth of humanity's galactic age, the age of human. Isolation was over. The age of human expansion had begun. And the galaxy would never be the same. The end.